Hey y'all. Today we are going to have a very special guest join us for a little live conversation. Sophia Rowe is someone who I love following, love watching speak, and I just asked her to come on this morning to talk to us about whatever she wanted. We'll get more into specifics of that. I'm just gonna wait for her to join. I miss my sister. Hi, Bella. Soph, if you see me on here, I know I didn't text you back on your last text, but she'll come soon. I actually just realized I don't know how to answer to this. I hope it just pops up like. Okay, send me a request. I see you. Wait, do I see you? Oh my god, do I not know how to do a request? Okay, there she is.
Did it! You did it!
Every time I'm so proud. It's only like my third live stream with someone and I get so scared.
So confusing, right? You're like, oh my god, what in the hell? Did I do this correctly? I know
it's really scary.
I know, it's super scary. Thank you so much for doing this,
You're
Bob.
so cute always.
And oh man, you do.
Thank you.
A lot to me. And you know, I think that these conversations are made to feel so scary and so complicated, and they don't have to be. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, for sure.
So I think I really wanted to talk about a lot of things, but I really wanted to start with ceremonial gestures and white saviorship, because I think that that's like, because I do think that there are a lot of white people really doing great work, right? Showing up, they're supporting, they're all tagging and reposting and graphics, and I think that's awesome, and that isn't lost on me. But I do think it's important to talk about ceremonial gestures, because in some ways, like Black Lives Matter Street, for instance, right? We have streets that are Black Lives Matter Road. You know, now we're gonna have a Black Lives Matter holiday. Things are they're definitely not void of progress, but they're not what Black and brown people have like asked for.
Right. And that's what I love. I mean, anyone who's watching after this live stream, like, just go to Sophia's page and watch her saved lives, because they're just, one, so informative, but two, you make them so conversational. And I love how you obviously come into every live with something that you want to talk about, but you respond really well to the people in the comments, and that's my favorite part. And it really becomes a conversation with the people that are watching. And this is something that you spoke about the other day that I really, really enjoyed, that conversation where she was explaining how a lot of times white people will go into Black and brown communities and assume that we know what people need without trying to listen or have the conversation or build the relationships in the first place.
Right.
And we talked about, in work that we've both done, you know, for welfare of others, the importance of going into those situations with the questions of, what do you need? What can we do for you? And, you know, what do you want the world to know about you? So that it's those people that are creating those narratives about themselves, instead of us saying, oh, because I'm a white person, I'm going to give you this because it's what I have in my life, and that means that you probably want it too.
Bingo. That assumption, and that's even as far back as the 1200s and 1300s, we see proof of this when we think about Westerners and missionaries. And this is about all the time.
You need God, or you need Jesus. Yeah.
And, oh my God, these poor heathens. they're in poverty. They need Jesus, you know? And it's like, no.
They already have their religion.
They already have that. like throw a Bible at them, right? Like, you know, I think it's also like, again, you're looking at things through this sort of film of privileged veil. Like it must be Jesus that they need. That must be the answer, right? Because that's me. So I think that, you know, when you're walking into a Black or brown neighborhood, to have this sort of idea that you know what this group of people might want, because that's what you know, like maybe you want a Whole Foods in your neighborhood. Perhaps these Black and brown people don't want a Whole Foods in their, you know what I'm saying?
They want their local grocery store they've had for 15 years.
Yes, I can confirm that we do not want Whole Foods in our neighborhood.
Right.
So, we definitely don't. But I think that when we're looking at sort of the idea of like, how can I help? Sometimes we want to put ourselves really into it. And there's this, you really have to take the privilege completely out of it and really just have to hang out in this place of like, you don't know anything. This is people you don't know. This is a neighborhood you don't know. You know, and I always use this example in my neighborhood. There's this woman who has
in the flower shop.
The flower shop. This is a wonderful example. And I just think about say you want to support her, instead of going into this flower shop and saying, oh, you know what? I have supplements for you, or I have coupons for you. Why not get to know this Black woman? Why not get to know the story? Why not wow, like she lives in Brownstone right across the neighborhood. She's late on her property taxes. She lives with 6 other people. Wow, you know, she might need some marketing help. And my husband does. Or she might need help with her social media. Oh, that's what my son does. Right? Like, it really comes down.
It doesn't mean money. It doesn't mean always giving money. It's about like helping with like resources and connections and things that we have from privilege in the first place, of maybe like a broader scheme of education or whatever, those tools that can be used to help other people. And also what you said the other day about, what was it? Yeah, I mean, you just said it with like, so with just being like, I can offer this. And what I was going to say is that once you create the trust between someone and they actually know that you're someone that is supportive of their business, comes in, talks to them every week, actually has a conversation, then the trust builds, and then they will start to open up about like what they need. And if you're listening, you'll pick up on those things, even if it's not a direct like, I need
exactly 1,000%. Much is really tied into what that relationship is. So just say, I'm support Black and brown kids, I'm just going to throw some money at an organization, keeping in mind that organizations many times rely on the death of Black people. This is when they're like, ooh, someone's died, let's promo. I suppose I talk the gift of grassroots giving sometimes about money, and so much is about resources, as so much as it's about assistance, you know, comes in all sizes, but you don't know the assistance necessary unless you A, develop the relationship, and B, ask. And it can seem a weird thing, but in the time we've talked about before, the other day when we talked about Women's Prison Association, when you're working on a reentry program with someone who was previously incarcerated, you ask, what can I do for you? What is it you need? Is it work? Is it clothes? Is your children? Like, etc.
And remember that they're individual people and stories. They're not just like a Black or brown person, and that means that like everyone needs the same thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, this also conversation really, like, this really ebbs into, and we also spoke about redlining, which, by the way, redlining was only outlawed in 1968. I mean, this was ago.
And what I realized the other day in your live is that, like, I mean, thankfully I had really good history teachers, and I also took world issues classes outside of history. Like, I was just interested in it, so I was really privileged in that way. But I realized that, like, there's so many people that didn't learn about redlining, didn't learn about gentrification, and like, it's so important, and it's something that we should touch on. Please continue.
Yeah, I think well, not only is it an important topic, and I want to make sure that I have my stats here, but I can only speak for New York. I only want to speak for New York because I am a New Yorker. I've been in New York for more than 10 years. Like, this gentrification. Bill de Blasio, he's the first of 109 mayors, that had his sort of celebratory celebration. I am the mayor of Brooklyn. No other mayor wanted to have that happen in Brooklyn. He was like, I'm Park Slope. This is rad, right? This is the first time in 2013. This happened literally 11/5/2013. I'll never forget it because November 5th is my birthday. So it's like, so I remember the day so clearly that he's talking about redlining. And he's saying, like, I remember when redlining was a thing. And I actually have a very clear definition of redlining so that we know what it is. Very clear.
Yeah.
Or institutions refuse mortgages or any kind of service to a certain neighborhood, racial or ethnic composition. This was legal, very legal, up until 1968. Not only was it legal, but there was a corp, which is now defunded, called the Homeowners Loan Corp. These people were bankers, real estate agents, part of the sort of bank redlining that were actually who created the maps.
Yeah, and everyone should go to their own home cities.
Yes.
And see what their redlining maps, how they've changed and how they were in the beginning, and then what areas have now become, how they've changed. Because like you were talking about the other day, like even I learned last week, like Central Park used to be like a very thriving, amazing Black community with churches, with like schools, with all these things. And then one day it's just like, and the importance of also then why these communities that are first like, oh, this is like dangerous, or like what do they label them as? I
don't know.
There's like different, when the areas first get redlined, they're like,
oh yes,
the certain words they use are like just so bizarre.
Well, what I wanted to point out is because this is the argument that we always get when we hear about redlining. We always get it. We always hear, but redlining ended in 1968. Yeah, okay, just like slavery ended, right?
Yeah.
Just Emancipation Proclamation, like that meant anything.
Yeah.
Important to understand that America's only 243 years old.
Right.
Young country, right?
Yeah.
Young. And so I always bring up that there's a case actually in 2010 against Wells Fargo. In 2010, it came to fruition. They basically discovered that they mention and refer to Black customers as mud people. This is on the record. Like, you can look this up. They were referred to as mud people, and they pushed horrible loans and called these loans ghetto loans. So these ghetto loans had crazy high interest rates, right? 2010. So much for that thing being abolished in 1968, right? So much being a thing. Redlining is absolutely, still see it. There's also retail redlining. You see that all the time as well. The assumption that a business doesn't want to move in because they don't want a Black or brown customer. Not because a Black shop there, but they're not interested in having a Black or brown customer, right? That's a whole element of retail redlining that exists right now. It literally right now. And
or someone, sorry, continue.
No, I just think that it's interesting because this also follows, you know, gentrification intrinsically isn't about color. It's really more about class. But as who developed the class structure in You're good. Almost every single white person in this country is also an immigrant, right? You're talking about Europeans that came to this nation, stole it from people that didn't belong to, and you're good. Gee, babe. I see you. You're good. But so when you're looking at the history of it all, you're like investigating what whiteness. You know, I always encourage, and I think it's for me, I'm very empathetic to white people because you can't help that you are white. It's not something that you were just born. Look, and that's what it is. But I think that in America, we have this sort of like make America great again idea that this never was a great place if you're looking at the history of it. Do you know what I'm saying? This place was stolen from people, right? Also, the that live here for one reason or another have forgotten that they are also immigrants. Like, like you're also an immigrant. Like,
and for you to say like, oh, I'm American and therefore we own this land. Like, what about where your
Right.
ancestors came from, and also the fact that white people didn't discover this country. Like, you can't discover a country that was already lived on.
Yes, exactly. So
Right.
there's this revision that we see so often. We see it's the way that children are taught in the South. I mean, we have, you know, the daughters of the Southern Confederacy, right? I mean, literally came in and said, you know, we need to be thought of as winners. So we're just going to write books to let everybody know that we're awesome. And this is what children are taught.
Still now, like, that's why I say, like, you know, I maybe came from a school district that
Sure.
that found the real history more important, but like, there's definitely parts of this country that they just don't want to teach that. Like, they just don't want that to be known, and it's crazy.
It's no coincidence that many of the states that are in support of Make America Great Again are Southern states, which, as we know, were some of the pillars for slavery. This is not purely design. I mean, this is like, things are happening exactly how they were kind of laid out to happen. You know, I find it very interesting that there's so much pride in what it is to be an American. But this is a country that is so young, you know, and it's so interesting that the people that founded this country are so quick to ignore that they themselves are European immigrants. The only, if you're really looking at who's a true American, it's Native Americans, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so this also plays into what happens when we do feel bad about something. We're like, oh, we feel bad about what we did, so we're just going to give you this like reservation. We're going to give you this like, we're not going to give you anything. We're not going to,
like, how about you take a small reservation?
Yeah,
we give the rest of the country.
We're not have to pay taxes. It's good, right? Like, we're going to give you this tiny little, we'll make it tax free. It's all good. We'll make it tax free. We're going to give you your own police, but all the police can also be white people. It's like, you know, it's like a
very strange.
But it also plays into sort of that idea of gentrification and redlining. And here's the thing about gentrification: it doesn't have to be bad intrinsically, you know. And it's like a big, huge. It feels a lot. So it's not one of those things that I think is it's a little too broad for just one word, because there's so many things that imply sort of gentrification. With, you know, the white man moving in and making the prices skyrocket. There are ways that gentrification can actually be positive. For example, Brooklyn, a good type of gentrification would be, say, listen, white people, segregation doesn't exist. You can move wherever you want. However, if you are a black or brown person and you own a home, we're going to give you incentives to your home. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Property taxes lower. If you were a black person and you've lived in a neighborhood and you can prove it for 20 plus years, we're going to give you a rent to own loan, right? Like, there are so many things that could actually be really, really wonderful. And I think about this a lot, like, wow, protect elderly and long-term residents from property taxes. If you've been here for over 60 years, you don't have to pay property taxes, right?
Yeah,
like, this would be a great, means black and brown people don't feel like they have to sell their homes. This is wonderful. Establish community benefits. So this would be a situation in which black people had say of what happened to their home even after they sell it. Like, I'll tell you, my home is, as long as you promise to turn it into a school, or turn it into or turn it into a nursery or a hospital, for instance.
And does this include like helping to like, I've tried to do work with organizations where, like, to go in and just like better the parks and like the outdoor spaces that are already there.
Exactly. So this is the probably king shit sort of element of gentrification that I think of. So it's sort of the gentrification properties, right? The property of gentrifying, making something shouldn't also have to entail that it only belongs to white people, right? Like, you should be sort of elementally insert the properties of gentrification, making parks nicer, making roads nicer, without then also opening it up for white people to move in and buy
it. It shouldn't be about that. It's
not about that, exactly. So the gentrification process should just be something you should do because you should do it, right? It benefits, that's also something that benefits the community that's already there. That doesn't entail, let's make this nice for the new folks that are moving in.
Right.
Like, make this nice for the folks that have always been here. Because as we know, there are such a thing as black neighborhoods, more Asian population neighborhoods, Spanish neighborhoods, because we know redlining was a thing up until 1968. And so because thing, there are literally maps that are drawn out that have Black neighborhoods, Asian neighborhoods. That's a thing. And so when you're coming to East New York in particular, which is where I live, and it's a very Black-centric neighborhood, you see that there isn't a lot of thing up that happens unless it's in preparation for new capital, right? It's preparation for more money and for more people to move in. And as white people move in, they have cars. I mean, they can just go wherever they want. They can go, they don't need to worry if there's a grocery store in the neighborhood because they're going to drive to Whole Foods over in Bed-Stuy or from Bushwick. You know what I mean? Like, not going to.
Well, this is like what there was a girl the other day that commented on one of your lives, and she was like, "Well, I'm white, but I live in a Black neighborhood," and you were like, "Yeah, but like that's also the problem is that like white people have to realize that they have the privilege to be able to have more opportunity to get jobs that can get higher pay." That then they don't have to move into those places. And once that starts to happen, then it's like, then they don't want the food that's already in the restaurants that are there. So then those restaurants start to move out, or like you're saying, the Whole Foods, the grocery stores, the whatever shops are already there, the daycare centers.
The daycare center, that's a big one. Childcare is a really huge one. Ultimately, I get the question a lot. So why are Black and brown neighborhoods so dangerous? And I always say they're not dangerous. There's just more police. And so, listen, I mean, you know how it is. If you're looking for a problem, you're going to find one. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you're talking about more police. Obviously, there's more crime. There's the same amount of crime going on in any neighborhood. But white neighborhoods are not as policed as Black neighborhoods are. And so this is a big reason why these Black neighborhoods are supposedly more crime. Someone in the live the other day, like, you know, when I go to these Black and brown neighborhoods to support them, Black and brown people stare at me. Makes me feel uncomfortable.
You're like, do you know how Black and brown people have been looked at or like treated in like you can't get stared at for 10 seconds? Like get your chicken noodle soup and move on. Like
they're just like, what? Like they're just like, oh, I can't believe this person's here. But you know what? If you start coming around more often, it's gonna be normal. And
they'll be like, hey Susan, like it's not that big of a deal. Like
as long as people see that your presence is there. And not only this, they expect it. And that's the part that I really think is such a big deal, is like, if you want to talk about supporting a Black neighborhood, it's even if it's a beauty store, like I said, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever it is. Ultimately, the places there that are the businesses that you're shopping at, you need to tell them to expect you. Expect to see me twice a week, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that when I'm thinking about how uncomfortable it might be to a white person in a neighborhood, you know, I just think, well, that's what Black people feel like all the time. You know, like they're just always
That was my first thought when that girl said that the other day. I was just like
Black and brown people have to be stared at. They always have to know. When you're a Black or brown person, you always have to know, wow, I am a Black and brown. I need to make sure I present in a certain way. I need to make I'm mindful of what I look like as opposed to what everyone looks like. There's so much to think about when you're a Black or brown person, you know? Right. And so this also plays into gentrification. This plays into, we know that white people are not going to support these stores. So these stores are going to close. And what's going to open up? It's going to be restaurants. They're going to be expensive restaurants, right? And we know from here, then we have displacement. Then the rent, we have to re-sign that lease every month because we don't have. Banks won't give that to Black or brown people. Banks won't let Black or brown people own the homes that they've been in for 20, 25 years. So when that new lease comes around, it's $300 more, $400 more. And this is when displacement starts. And this is how the whole neighborhood starts to change. And before you know it, you've got this gentrification that moves its way out. When I first moved here 10 years ago, it was really just Williamsburg, Brooklyn Heights, little bit in downtown Brooklyn, but now it's like, I mean, Carroll Gardens, Red Hook. I mean, the whole Brooklyn is really gentrified. Really just have this little bit of Brownsville, East New York left.
Right.
And because of that, you are having a displaced people. Honestly, the neighborhood to live in now is Queens. And I never thought I'd that, but that's really what's happening. But then there is also, and this flip side of gentrification. There's this idea that white people say, hey, but I want to live in a diverse place.
Sorry, say that again. You cut out.
This idea that white people move into a neighborhood because they want more diversity.
Oh, right.
They want, well, they're like, so I want to have more diversity. I want to I want to have schools where their teachers are Black. You shouldn't need to move into a Black neighborhood for that to be the case, right? You need to go to the school board where you currently live and demand a more diversified education for your children, right? Like, this, you don't need to say, oh, well, hell, fuck it. I guess I'll just have to move into the Black neighborhood to get Black teachers for my kids.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's like that big Karen energy. Like, listen, I love a Karen for me. Like, if you want to like go and just complain, I want to see the manager. Like, I love that energy. Just take that energy to the school board.
Yeah.
City hall. Take it to the police commissioner's office. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Take it to the voting to go vote. Like,
that's like sort of how I feel about it. And when we are in places where we know redlining exists, and we know gentrification is real. Like, this is all a reality. We just have to remember to live there all the time. You know, we just always have to remember to keep ourselves very, very mindful. Like, when you walk down the street, it's not a terrible thing to think about your privileges. Think about them when you walk around. Think about, I have health insurance. Even I have privilege. I have privilege as a Black woman. I have lighter skin. I'm skinny, right? I have a certain type of hair. I have a certain type of face. It's not a terrible thing to be, having privilege isn't bad. It's like what you do with it. You know what I mean? I think that we come to terms with that. The privileges that you have or I have or anybody might have, there's a way that they can be beneficial to those who are not privileged. We just have to, like we talked about at the top, you have to make sure that you're leading with what do you, right? And be okay with you not being the one that can do it. Like, I've had so many instances where I tithe to my community, and tithing is it's biblical. So tithe to your pastor, right? You pay 20% of what you make to your pastor. That keeps the lights on, that pays his bills, right? So I tithe to my neighborhood because my neighborhood is, they're in essence who I pray to. This is where I live. These are the people. These are my people, right? But what comes with that tithing, that grassroots effort, is I have to get to know my community. I have to get to know these people. I won't be, who am I tithing for? It's not as simple as just me writing a check to an organization. Like, that's not what I'm looking for. And I think that that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, oh, what can white people do? Because like, I think there's also this intrinsic idea that Black people are saying white people are bad. And I just don't subscribe to that. I don't think that people are bad. I don't. I just think there's some displaced sort of ideas. I just don't think that we really know as white people, not myself, but as white people, don't really understand what to do. And I think that starts asking, don't say, hey, what can I do? Say, hey, what can I do for you? Like, what can I give you? Is there something here? Don't go to a Black or brown person and ask them what books to read, what to listen to. These books have been written for, Angela Davis has been around for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Like, things have been in existence. We've got Bell Hooks books all over my house, right? Like, these things have been around. I think more than it's understanding that it's not about people. I don't think that it should be looked at like Black people need white people to do the right thing. White people just should do the right thing, right? It's not, Black and brown people have been in their neighborhoods and they're doing just fine. However, quality is really what white people are saying they're interested in. If Black lives really matter to you, like you say they do, then you should be doing these things. You shouldn't just insert yourself and just say, look what we did for you. We built you a monument. We did this street after you. We named a holiday after you. Like, it's not.
But it's also not about just like talking to the Black and brown people in your life and like therefore figuring it out. It's also like having that moment of like self-reflection and like an honest conversation with yourself. And like a moment of thoughtfulness where you're like, where in the past have I, like, even without, not that it came from a place of malice, but like, where have I been in situations where I could have done better. And I think that that's something that like me, especially like in fashion with like specific friends that, you know, I've in the moment felt like, okay, I was there for them. Like they came to me after, you know, they were treated this way at a fashion show or whatever. And like, I was there to listen and whatever. And maybe in the moment I felt like I didn't really have like I wasn't in the place where I could fix that or help them with it. And now like to go back this week and be like, hey, like in the future, I don't know what it is going to be that I'm going to do to make that better, but like I'm going to try harder and like I'm going to figure it out. And like I could have maybe figured out a way to like use my privilege in a way that fought for you better instead of just being there to listen. Like maybe that wasn't enough. You know what I mean? And I think that self-reflection and realizing we're not always doing a good job, even if it didn't come from a place of not trying or not wanting to or not caring about what they were experiencing. It's just that like next time I'm going to try harder to do more.
Yeah. When we call that, I mean, the word for that we call that accountability.
Yeah.
And in so many ways, that exactly what Black and brown people are looking for. We are literally just looking for accountability. Stand up and admit this moment that you did not protect a Black or brown person. Like, and you see the error in that, you know, allow us to trust you, right? Then you believe that maybe, you know what, maybe Black Lives Matter, maybe they do matter to this person, you know, you hold yourself accountable. This is absolute. Like, this is a huge, huge step, you know, holding yourself accountable and also holding yourself accountable to the knowledge that you learn. When you learn that you are incorrect and you say, you know, I was incorrect, the power in that is really, really, really powerful. I learned that I was born into a system that said I'm better because I'm white, and that's not good for me because that's in a delusional place, right? So I'm not going to support that anymore. I mean, there's this woman, Sondra, talks about how, you know, like I said, you can't help that you were born white. You can't help it at all. But there are elements of whiteness because the whiteness is the system. There are of that are bad. So it's up to you to point them out. Ooh, that's good. That's an incorrect piece of information. Let's toss it. It's like having something smelly in your house. You know, well, I guess my house just stinks. Like, no, you're going to find the smelly thing and you're going to throw it out because it stinks. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's really the accountability step. Honestly, Gigi, I think that might even be probably one of the most important things to Black and brown people, really, truly. Beyond assistant, really, is really just holding yourself and your family and your ancestors accountable, right? And I think it's also this feeling, and I had this white friend reach out to me and she said, Soph, you know, I feel so bad about my ancestors and I just feel bad. I just feel terrible. And I say, sit with it. That's okay. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay. But after that, after you're done having those feelings, now you know better, right? And now you've convinced Black and brown people that you really understand how wrong the system has actually been. That accountability step is so valuable. And it feels weird. I mean, that's the one good thing about this movement now isn't it interesting now you feel a little bit more prepared to have these kinds of conversations with Black and brown people? Isn't that interesting? Like,
where it's like, the uncomfortableness is the point. And like, this has been something that like I've dealt with. I mean, you're talking about the system generally overall, but I think within whatever industry anyone works in, they've experienced something like this where it's about in times where it's not like I'm just now feeling bad for times where I haven't been able to stand up for myself in the times when I knew something wrong was going on set, for example. But now I can say, okay, in that time, I learned from not standing up for myself when I didn't follow my intuition. And I asked people like, okay, well, there's one of the most famous Black makeup artists on set, and I said like, hey, do you think that like this is wrong? And she was like, no, darling, it's major. And I was like, okay. And I'm like 17, so I just like didn't do anything. And like now I can, it's a time where I can come out and be like, if there's any 17-year-old models that are watching, like, if you're in that situation, like, do what you think is right. Like, don't ask other people for like support. You don't need it. Like,
Right.
Like, do what you think is right in the moment, and like feel strong about it, because it always will like represent you in the end.
Yes.
And it's not something like to be ashamed of if you have that feeling. You know what I mean? Like, I've been in situations where I knew it was wrong, but I didn't think that I was allowed to have those opinions because the industry of fashion scared me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think that probably in a lot of workspaces, you don't feel like you're successful enough, or you have been there long enough to have a voice that way, and you do.
Yes. It's like it's this crazy thing.
I got emotional, sorry. Everyone's like making fun of my voice, but it gets shaky.
This stuff is real. It really is. And like you said, this really crosses all industries, right? Like, this is a real thing. And the pain, it's interesting that you get emotional, because think about how painful it is. Your intuition, you were born with it. You're born with intuition. So when you have to ignore it, I mean, think about how painful that is. When you intrinsically know deep down inside your spirit that something is wrong, but you have to ignore it for whatever reason, whether it's you don't feel, I mean, for me in the chef space, are you kidding? Oh my God, that's like, that's it. I mean, stories for days, very similar to fashion, like being a woman in a kitchen and
it's already like, there's such a crazy,
yes,
vibe in that. I've read about that. Yeah.
It's like, holy shit, I feel like I can't say anything because I've had to work so hard to get this point. So I don't want to speak up and
upset anyone, or think that I'm disrespecting anyone by having an opinion.
Yeah, because what if they never hire me again? And this is my one shot. Isn't it funny how you think you've always got one shot? This is one shot, and I can't fall, because then not gonna hire me again. Then Vogue's not gonna hire me again. Then this designer's not gonna hire me again. Then this family's not gonna hire me again. It's all the same. There's so much intersection. Whether you're talking tech, corporate, real estate, fashion, food, etc. So it's about not listening to your intuition and the pain of that. And I can just, every industry that I've ever sort of talked about or talked to someone in it, there's this intrinsic sort of ignoring when you see something, because you're scared of what will happen. And now, the silver lining here is that we're finally in a situation where when you do something and you call for it, you can lose your job. You know what I'm saying? Like, it matters. And so I do think that is I think it's such a valuable thing. And like you mentioned, I can't think of anything more important for a 17-year-old model to know. If you situation on a photo shoot and something doesn't feel right, or something happens that isn't right, you are well right to speak up, absent of asking someone first, or or doing that thing where you have to like, hey, so is it just me, or is this where you're like, it's weird, like I knew it was not right, and like I just thought everyone here has been in the fashion industry for 30 years, and like I'm just like, I guess this is just like part of it, fashion, like oh totally, like, oh well, women just get paid less. And I guess that's just like, like I remember my first time seeing a paid discrepancy and seeing that and noticing that someone the same job as me that was a man was paid more than me and not saying anything, because I just thought, well, I guess that's the industry. Like, I guess that's how it goes, and now, like, I hope that this movement, I mean, whether you're calling it a movement, you're calling it a civil war, whatever you're calling it, depends on who you ask, has the silver lining there really made people more comfortable ever to actually have a conversation about to have a conversation about race, to talk to white friends, to talk to family members. I was talking to a friend, and she was the way I was like, how are you talking to your grandfather? Because he was from West Virginia, was extremely racist. And she said, I was leading like, hey, grandpa, you're an immigrant, right? Like, like that you are one, right? And so finding these little intricacies and ways to communicate people right now, I think is the most valuable thing. And this is why language is really important. And we talk about that all the time. That's something I talk to my community all the time. Like, make sure that you arm yourself. That's the point of the books and the podcast. And that's the point of all that stuff, is that you have the, now you actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that when you do have conversations with your family, you feel prepared, right?
Yeah. And my favorite is like just with like numbers and facts and being like, this it's and to not, if you're assertive at first, it doesn't need to boil up to a place where then you're flipping and like getting like mad, because then it's not getting your point across in the way that it should, because you're right with the facts that you have.
Yes.
And you already know you're right, so you can like stay calm with your facts. And also I saw this thing that I thought was great, of like asking, instead of like attacking the person for having a different opinion, start to ask questions that break apart why they have that opinion.
Ask questions. This is huge. I was just about to say that. This is your big, have a racist family member. Hey, Pop, so what's this, like, what happened that you feel this way about Black people? And maybe he'll open up and tell you a story. Maybe it was some story that happened with him and a Black person. And then you can say, so wait, so I understand that's a terrible thing that happened to you. So that means Black people are a monopoly. And now just because you had one bad experience with a Black person, they're all bad now. He can start to hear in his brain how, like, that is kind of racist. You know, like he can teach himself this. And I think there's another thing that comes into is really designing your boundaries before you go into having this conversation. Yeah. Really call out what is your exit strategy? Because you, like you said, you made a really great point, Gigi, how you were saying, like, this doesn't need to be this escalation ladder that you're getting, right? Like, you don't need to get in a full-blown uproar and convince this it's probably been racist to, like, you know, forever, to suddenly not be racist. This is going to be this conversation. So understand an exit strategy. Drop some questions, right? Drop a few, like, it's interesting that you feel like that, because I was reading this book, right? Or I was having this conversation with a friend, and what you're describing sounds like it might be systemic racism. I've been reading a lot about it. What do you think about that, right?
Yeah, like, or like, I'll send you a link later, like, let me know what you think about it once you read it. And like they usually come back with like their own link. Or like,
well, they the conversation we're talking about. I think this is what we're talking about. Asking questions leads to conversation. You're having a conversation. And I do think that there should be some kind of preparation for this racist family member or friend. Be prepared for this person to not listen. You know, be prepared for this. If you want to hold a really clear barrier, not a boundary, and you want to say, listen, if you are not going to let go of these racist beliefs or racist ideation, then I cannot see you anymore. I can't allow myself to be part of this part of this relationship anymore. Be prepared for that. And a lot of times, a family member, they're going to come around. If they think that, wow, I'm going to lose a granddaughter because of this, this is the impetus or the genesis of a real conflict. Like, wow. Most grandparents, aunts, uncles are not going to be willing to lose the relationship with a family member because of this. You know what I mean? You just got to be prepared to go there. But what you said, Gigi, in this very clear, you've already done your research. You've already read books. You know what you know. You don't need to go guns blazing, you know? And just, so, because a lot of times I think that's how that's how it feels like you need to be. Yeah. You know? Like you need to be this sort of angry person. And I think that's, when I think about me, I'm a very pedagogical sort of educator person. Obviously, my work is more in the food access space, but food access are all, and so as we know, they're all very much the same kind of conversation. Right. Empathy is an important thing to have when you have these conversations. Yeah, you have to. Right, you have to. So this is my position. I don't have the position of like, I'm angry. You will do what I say. You're wrong. F you for being racist. No. Empathy is so important when you're diving into such difficult, layered, oh my God, patchy conversations that are racism. Or, and I mean, racism is just really one, right? I mean, then there's like a whole other sort of intersection involved once you start getting into Black, trans, or once you start getting into gender binary.
For sure.
Right? There's so much intersection when it comes to these things. So I just think when you're having a conversation about racism, understanding your basis of knowledge so you can go in feeling very comfortable, like, ask questions, C, be prepared for this to be something you have to keep having. It's not like a one and done. You're trying to make racism here. Like,
yeah, and like you, if you go into it with just like a passionate opinion on something, but you haven't done the research, then like, you will get halfway through the conversation and get more worked up because you don't have the tools to like truly express why you feel this way or fight for what you know is right in your head. But like, I think that's so important.
1000%. That's what the books are for. That's what the podcasts are for. And I tell them all the time, it's the simple stuff. Learning the difference between systemic and systematic. The language, right? What the word for when people come over here and steal land, that word's called colonization, right? We get that knowledge bank.
And just to write it down once, like just so that it's in your head, like it's not just about like watching one thing or being like, oh, I heard the difference. Like writing it down really helps me, like just taking one note, even if you never see that notepad again, like it gets it in your head, and or to write down one example of it like really helps me as well.
Yeah, language is really important. That's actually, a journal is actually something I suggest to my community all the time. Book, and this isn't just about racism. Anytime you read a book and you get a word you don't understand, why not write it down? This is going to be this is good for your knowledge bank. It's good for everything. So this can't be a bad thing. You know, when there's a word for almost everything. When Black people had to come over here and learn the language and learn these customs, that's called cultural assimilation, right? You get things in your brain, then you are on have conversation confidently with your family member. Language is one of the first places to start.
And it's something that no one can take that from you. As heated as the conversation gets, as much as they want to say, oh, this happened, that happened, whatever, and you're like, actually, this is the word, this is the definition, and these are the numbers that go with it. What are they going to say?
It's so, nothing. There's nothing. Just like when they say, I'm not racist, I love Beyonce. And you could say, what you just said is tokenist. Tokenism. That is a form of implicit bias, which is a microaggression form of racism. You can feel so comfortable and confident because this stuff just rolls off your tongue because you've done this work, done this knowledge. And I think that like when we're looking at what Black and brown people are interested in, they're interested in decolonization. They're interested in getting their languages back from them that were stolen. This is a strong, strong concept to explain to a grandparent, letting your maybe racist parent know that Black people they actually aren't trying to steal anything. They're interested in decolonization. You have a word for that. I think that again, language, journal, it might seem so like silly, but I think if we kind of open up wide umbrella and make it more like a dictionary for you just in general, not like, oh, these are all the words about racism. It's like, no, like I think this is something that you should always
general words to help conversations in the future of things that I'm interested in.
Another word for that. Oh, there's another word for fantastic, right? This cannot be a bad thing. And so looking at when most people are truly not this white supremacy KKK. That is really not most people. It's not, there is not.
No, it's just there's a lack of education or a misunderstanding, or like there's just something that didn't.
Yes. It's not like there's this huge conglomerate of KKK just hate Black people. It's more, it's hidden bias, more implicit bias. It's more microaggression. One of the popular ones I think about all the time is, who would you rather ask directions to? A white man or a Black man, right? Who do you feel safer driving your airplane? A Black man or a white man, right? These are what we call implicit hidden bias. And
and it's when people say like, oh, I don't have a racist bone in me. It's like every person, regardless of their race, has has a race, like it's part of like human nature, and it's about coming to terms with that and then realizing how to work yourself out of the things that like you didn't even realize were put in place in the system.
You didn't even realize.
For you to just,
yeah, like, oh my God, everybody has implicit or hidden bias. We start seeing showcases of it as young as 18 months old, where children are more likely to want to hang out with a child they identify with. This is why it's important to make sure if a child is going to a birthday party that there are people at the birthday party that don't look like them.
Or, or reading books that have main characters with different skin colors.
Absolutely. Who have values, believe in different things, different religions, etc. We see implicit in babies. And so this is a big reason why most of us all have some form of implicit bias. Implicit bias leads to prejudice. Prejudice leads to discrimination. Discrimination to racism. That's typically right. You have an implicit bias. I feel a certain way. Again, I only really feel safe in a neighborhood that's my neighborhood. Before you know it, a black person in the neighborhood, you're like, well, why is he? That's prejudice. And then you yell at the black. Why are you here? That's discrimination. And then call the cops on this person. That's right. It builds. There's a system, and it's literally before you know it, you're like, crap. I've become racist. And this is the problem with the hidden or implicit biases. Before you know it, the prejudice becomes discrimination, discrimination becomes racism, and then boom, it just happens very quickly, right? And so implicit biases at the very beginning, especially tokenism, right? Like, I'm not racist, I love Michael Jordan, or like whatever. It's, you know, I love Beyonce, or I love Naomi Campbell, right? Like this is, this sort of like cultural ideation, like I only love a black person if they're super beautiful or super. That doesn't make you not racist. That's actually racist, So it's really interesting how we have like racial inequities within systems that we don't even assume are even racial. We don't even think, we're not really thinking. We just think, oh, I love Beyonce, possibly be racist, or I go to school with black kids. Like, if you don't know anything about black kids, or you're trying to hang out with the black kids, or you're trying to black, it just means you go to school with black kids. That's really what that means. So these forms of implicit bias and expression are the things you need to check in your own self, in your own, so that you can keep your own racism, right? That sort of, that part we talked about, that at bay, and so that you can feel qualified to have these conversations. Like you said at the beginning, if you don't have accountability in yourself, then you don't even qualify to talk about this stuff. Yeah. And the last thing, because Gigi, I'm so appreciative of your time, and this has been so great. But I'm so appreciative of you. Are you kidding? I just love you. This is wonderful. This is so great. I know that this sounds like a lot of work. It does. We've been speaking for an hour. This is a lot of stuff, but that's okay. This is work for everybody to have to do. This is just your duty as a human to be a good person, right? You don't have to do this work alone. I think it's the great thing. You don't have to have enough energy for a whole week. Luckily, and you don't have to do it all at once. Like, it can happen in, like, there can just be small moments in the day if you're just thinking about it. Yes. For once in a while during the day, like, that's part of the work of being like, oh, I remember that time where, like, this happened to my friend, and, like, maybe I could have done, that's part of the work. And, like, exactly. It's like the knowing. Just keep tabs mentally of just your privileges when you walk around. Keep tabs of, like, what could I have done differently in that situation? It's very subtle. It doesn't have to be, I don't think black and brown people aren't asking for your entire Instagram feed to suddenly be Black Lives Matter. I don't care. I'm just asking for you to thoughtfully think about this stuff on a regular basis. This is stuff, your anti-racist work to be, the verdict's still out on if white allyship exists, because even the idea of being white is a construct, right? But if anti-racist work is your goal, you gotta know you're gonna be doing it forever. So remember to take care of yourself. Remember to drink water, stay hydrated, rest. You're gonna need all that stuff in order to be this great anti-racist person, So this idea that I have to have enough energy in one day to do all this work today. It's just, it's not like that. You get to go to sleep at night and you get to wake up tomorrow and you get to continue your anti-racist work, which is the best thing about it. You know, it's, no Black or brown person is expecting this stuff to all make sense immediately or for you to do it all in one day. So that's the important part. So
anyone that checked in late, Sophia Rowe is a chef. She's an activist. She is a founder of the Pillow Talk sessions, which everyone should follow as well, just for great conversation on.
We have one today. I'm very excited.
Today at 1?
We're talking at 1 o'clock. We're talking about intimacy. So I'm very excited.
I will be watching as I do all of your lives, and she's also one of the contributing activists for my GIGI journal with V Magazine that comes, I think it's going to be July 6th on stands. And she wrote an amazing piece for it. It's really powerful. And I can't wait for everyone to see it. And I love you, Soph. I really appreciate your time and all the energy you give to the world. And like, I just love hearing you talk.
Oh man, well, I just love you, girl. I'm here. You know, I'm always text me. I love you.
Love you. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye.